Have you ever lived so long in silence? You forgot what it felt like to be seen. Calder Ray had. For 6 years, he spoke to no one but the wind and the mules. His land had dried, his heart even more so. Then one evening, he found a dying man near the fence. Apache, bleeding, alone. He could have walked away. No one would have known, but he chose to carry him into the barn. The next morning, 5 women rode out of the fog. They were not strangers. They were not guests. And they never asked to belong. If it were you, would you have opened your gate, or would fear have closed your door? This is not a story about rescue. It is about what happens when the land answers back, and when silence meets something stronger. Stay with us. Because what they built together was not just survival. It was home. The wind moved across the land like it had a purpose. It howled low through the canyon and shook the tin on the roof of the barn. Every sound on the Ray homestead echoed a little too long. Nothing out there to catch it. Calder Ray had lived alone for over 6 years. The porch of his house faced west. Each sunset burned orange into the ridgeline. He did not watch them anymore. Not since the night his family did not come home. The land was dry, the fences leaned, the roof of the tool shed had started to dip in the middle. Calder still kept the routine. Feed the mules. Check the fence. Fetch water from the spring. Swing the hammer where needed. That day, the hammer stayed in the bag. It was late afternoon when he saw the first drop of blood. Near the edge of the east pasture, just a small dark patch in the dirt, then another, then a trail. He followed it without thinking. Just past the dead juniper, near the fence line that bent toward the canyon wall, he found the body. It was a man, face down. One arm stretched out like he had tried to crawl, an arrow stuck from the side of his ribs. Blood soaked through the back of his shirt. His legs were bare, his feet torn from walking too far without boots. He was older, skin dark with dust. Long gray hair knotted near the neck. His chest moved, barely. Calder crouched down. He checked the hands first. No weapons, just dirt. Then he looked up, scanned the ridge. Nothing moved, no sound but the wind and a hawk crying far off. He stood still for a long time. Helping meant risk. In this land, every favor could turn into a problem. And yet, he could not walk away. Not because he was kind, but because something in his chest would not let him. Calder leaned down and reached under the arms of the man. The weight surprised him. Not heavy, just dead-like. He dragged the body across the pasture, past the split rail fence, through the side barn door. The smell of hay and mule sweat filled the air. One of the mules snorted. He laid the man near the feed bin, pulled a wool blanket from the hook, went to the well, boiled water, grabbed the bottle of whiskey he had not touched in months. No talking, no prayer. He took the knife from the shelf, washed it, dug the arrowhead out slow. The man flinched once, then went still. Calder wrapped the wound with cloth, tied it tight, pressed a hand to the chest, still breathing. He sat back on his boots. The barn was quiet again. Calder poured some of the hot water into a tin bowl, made a thin mash from dried cornmeal. He lifted a spoon to the lips of the man. Some of it stayed down that night. Calder did not go into the house. He unrolled his bedding in the barn, set the rifle close, laid there without sleep, just listening. He did not expect anyone to come, but he stayed ready. The man coughed once, near dawn, then nothing more. By morning, the wound had stopped bleeding. Calder fed the mules, checked the fence, hauled water, said nothing. The man did not wake, but he was still breathing. And somehow, that was enough to keep Calder from feeling entirely alone. The morning came colder than it should in May. Calder Ray stood at the porch with a tin cup in his hands. The coffee inside had gone cold, but he had not moved. He was watching the barn. The door was still open. The blanket near the feed bin was empty. The man was gone. No footprints, no blood trail, no sign of where he had gone. Calder did not speak. He just looked at the empty space for a long time. Then he turned, walked back into the house, and poured what was left of the coffee down the sink. He did not tell himself stories. Maybe the man had healed faster than expected. Maybe he had crawled off into the hills, or maybe he had died and the coyotes had taken care of what was left. By noon, the wind picked up again, a dry, steady push from the north. Calder was fixing a loose hinge on the side gate when he heard it. Hoofbeats, 5 of them, not fast, not rushed, just steady, confident. He set down the hammer and stood, eyes to the tree line. They came out of the fog like figures from an old dream. 5 riders, all women, all native. Each sat tall in the saddle. Each rode without fear. They stopped 20 yards from the barn. None of them spoke. One of them, broad-shouldered and calm, dismounted first. She stepped forward, hands empty. Her coat was thick-hide, dark with wear. Her boots sank into the dirt with each step. "You helped our elder," she said. Calder said nothing. She looked past him, toward the barn, toward the half-fixed fence, toward the house that sagged a little too far on the west side. "We came by choice," she added. "We will not take anything. We came to help what needs rebuilding." Calder let the words sit in the air. The women behind her dismounted without speaking. One carried a satchel. One had a bundle of cloth. Another held nothing at all. They did not wait for permission. They moved past Calder, calm, direct, toward the outbuildings, the barn, the shed, the old smokehouse. It felt like they had already seen it all before. Calder watched. He did not call after them. He did not tell them to leave. But inside his chest, something stirred. Not fear, not regret, just a shift, a small one, but clear. That night, he did not sleep in the barn. He watched from the window instead, the fire low, rifle near the wall, shadows moving out near the corral. The 5 women had made a small camp behind the shed. Their fire burned low. Their voices were quiet. If they spoke, it was in another tongue. Calder did not try to understand it. He just watched. The next morning, they were already working. One was hauling kindling. Another had pulled a tarp off the woodpile. One was near the barn, brushing the old mare with soft, steady strokes. They did not knock on his door. They did not ask for tools. They simply started. Calder stepped onto the porch. His boots found the first patch of sun that had broken through the clouds. He did not know their names. They had not offered them. But they were not guests. They had arrived with intent. Not for him. For the land. And something about that felt heavier than any thank you. That evening, Calder found a small bundle near the porch step, wrapped in hide. Inside were dried berries and slices of cured meat. He had not asked. He had not expected. But it was there. He sat on the porch long after the sun had dipped behind the ridge. He held the bundle in both hands, and for the first time in months, he let the silence settle without resistance. The 3rd day started with the sound of a shovel striking stone. Calder Ray was already awake. He had been sitting by the window since before first light, The women were outside. One of them was clearing the path to the root cellar. Dirt flew with each stroke. She worked slow and steady, and like the ground owed her something, and she intended to take it back. Calder did not step outside right away. He watched. He watched as Leah filled a bucket at the well and walked toward the chicken coop. Her coat was covered in hay. Her boots dragged mud. She moved like someone who had been there a long time, not someone passing through. He watched as Tula walked the ridge behind the barn. Her eyes scanned the trees. She stopped twice to kneel in the dust, looking for tracks, signs. Something Calder did not ask about. Ronnie stayed near the edge of the corral. She had a long stick and a bundle of herbs at her feet. She moved her hands in slow circles over the soil, not planting, just feeling. Calder knew that motion. It was a kind of quiet grief, a search for memory under the surface. No was in the shed, the small one near the back that used to hold rusted tools and empty feed sacks. Calder saw her carry out a box of broken handles and blades. She set them on a cloth and began sorting. She did not throw anything away, even the useless pieces. She cleaned. Sela did not speak that morning. She stood near the porch with her arms crossed, watching Calder the way he had watched them. There was no anger in her face, no urgency, only a kind of calm, the kind that came from surviving things others could not. Calder stepped outside with his hands empty. He walked past her without a word. He walked toward the barn, toward the last section of the fence that had sagged through winter. Sela followed, not close, just enough to see where he went. He began digging a post hole. She joined him 10 minutes later. She brought a beam, weathered, but straight. They worked without speaking. It went on like that for days. No one explained why they stayed. No one asked Calder if they could. They just stayed. Each morning, the tools were where they should be. The animals were fed, the firewood stacked, the kitchen shelf wiped clean. Leah patched a hole in the roof with strips of cloth and tar. Calder had planned to do it for months, but never climbed the ladder. Tula mended a gate latch using wire and a rusted hinge. Rainey cleared vines from the smokehouse and left bundles of dried herbs tied to the rafters. No took the old kettle from the cabin, scrubbed it, refilled it, then left it by the door with steam still rising from inside. Calder found himself changing his routes. He walked past where they worked. He said nothing, just watched. He began noticing things. How Leah brushed the mare with long, even strokes. How she hummed so low it was more breath than song. How Sela always walked the perimeter last, never first, as if closing a loop, not starting one. How Ronnie never ate when the others did, but always cleaned after. On the 6th evening, Calder stood behind the barn. He watched the 5 women gather around the fire they had built from scrap wood. They spoke softly, passed food between them, laughed once. Calder felt something rise in his chest. He did not know what to call it. Not warmth, not sorrow, not even longing. Just the realization that the space around him was no longer hollow. Later that night, Calder sat alone in the cabin. He stared at the journal on the shelf, the one that had belonged to his wife. He had not touched it since the burial. His hand reached for it, then stopped. Outside, he heard footsteps. Light, careful, then silence. He opened the door. Leah stood there. She held a pale, wooden object in her hand, a small carving shaped like a feather, simple but smooth, tied with twine. She held it out. "For the barn," she said. Calder took it. He looked at her. She did not look away. He nodded once. She turned, walked back into the dark. He closed the door, the carving still in his hand. For the first time in years, he felt something press against the silence. Not noise, not voices, just presence. It started with a smell, smoke. But not from their fire. Calder Ray stepped outside just after sunrise. The sky had a pale blue tint, the kind that came before real heat. He sniffed the air. Wood smoke, distant, thin, not their doing. He walked to the ridge, scanned the valley below. Nothing moved, but something sat in the air that had not been there before. A kind of tension, like the land knew what Calder had not said aloud. People had noticed. That afternoon, he hitched the wagon and rode to town. He did not want to, but they needed flour, salt, oil. The women had never asked, but he had seen how low the barrel had dipped, how the last sack had gone soft with time. He wore his old hat, the one with the broken edge. He kept his head low. Grady's general store sat like it always had, one door open, one dog asleep out front. Bell above the door, rusted but still sharp when touched. Inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. Grady looked up from behind the counter. His eyes narrowed. Not mean, but not warm either. "You got company up there?" he said. Calder did not answer. He picked up a sack of flour, a tin of oil, a coil of rope. Grady watched him. "I heard they are not white," he added. Calder looked at him. "Does that concern you?" Grady shrugged. "Not me. But it is a small town." Calder counted out the bills. "Then let them talk." He left without another word. The ride back felt longer. The wagon bounced harder. The wind cut sharper. By the time he reached the homestead, the sun was dipping low. He unloaded slow, thoughtful. Selah met him at the barn. She looked once at the wagon, then at his face. She said nothing. That night. Calder sat on the porch with the carving Leah had given him, still tucked in his shirt. The fire in the distance had gone cold, but the smoke scent remained. In the early hours, the wind shifted and brought something new. The scent of leather and horses. He rose before the sun, walked the fence line, each step quiet, measured. Near the north gate, he saw it, a string, thin, white, tied to the post, a bone hanging from the end, small, sharp, split through the middle. He stared at it, then reached out, took it down. He did not bring it inside. Instead, he walked to the shed, hung it on a nail by the door. Let it be seen. After breakfast, the women moved as usual, but their eyes said more. Tula walked the ridge twice. Leah did not hum while she worked. No boiled water with 2 knives at her side. That evening, Selah sat on the porch with Calder. She did not sit close, but she faced the same direction. "They will come," she said. Calder nodded. "I know. They will expect silence." He looked at her, saw the calm in her face, the strength under it. They may not get what they expect. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the dry leaves. Then, Ronnie appeared near the barn. She pointed to the far fence. A second string, tied tight, with a feather, this time, not one of theirs. Calder stood, his hand near his belt, but he did not draw. Instead, he walked to the feather, took it down, then burned it. The flame caught fast. The smell was sharp, bitter. He let it burn to ash, then walked back to the porch. Selah was still there. She watched him sit. Neither spoke again. But something had changed. They were no longer just being watched. They were being warned. The days grew longer, but the quiet between them did not ease. Calder Ray kept the routine. He hauled water, checked the fence, replaced the cracked hinge on the smokehouse door. The work never stopped, but something else had begun. He was not the only one doing it. Everywhere he turned, a hand had already been there. The bucket was full before he reached the well. The tools hung straight on the rack, where before they had been left in piles. The mule had been brushed, not just once, every morning. Even the burrs from the tail were gone. It was not magic. It was effort, shared effort, done without speaking, done with care. At first, Calder had resisted it, not out loud, but in the way he hesitated before opening the door, in the way he looked twice at the shelf that had been wiped clean. Then one night, something changed. There was stew on the stove, warm, rich. He had not made it. He had not asked for it. But it was there, the fire low, the cabin still. He sat alone at the table, ate slow, the way a man does when he knows someone cooked with intention. Outside. He heard faint laughter. The 5 women sat near the corral. No lanterns, just the moonlight and the faint glow of coals. He watched them from the window. It was not the noise that stayed with him. It was the rhythm, the ease. They were not afraid. They were not hiding. They belonged. The next morning, he found Leah in the barn. She was brushing the young mare. Again, she did not look up. "You do not talk much," Calder said. "Neither do you," she replied. He smiled. A real one. Not wide, but true. She kept brushing. Later that day, he found Noe behind the shed. She was digging a small plot. "Garden?" he asked. "For medicine?" He nodded. He did not ask what kind. That night, the sky turned red. A storm was near. They pulled tarps, moved supplies, tied the roof down. No panic, no orders. Each knew what to do. When the wind rose, Calder stood on the porch. Sella joined him. "You watch a lot," she said. "Someone needs to. You think they came for you." He shook his head. "I think they came for the land." She looked out over the pasture. "That is true." A long pause. "Why are you still here?" Calder asked. She did not answer right away. Then she said it plain. "I had 2 sons, both taken in ambushes, 1 year apart. After the second, I stopped saying names." Calder did not move. No passed behind them with a bundle of herbs. She did not interrupt. Inside the barn, Leah hung the lantern. Outside the wind howled, but on the porch, it was quiet. "I do not need saving," Selah said. "None of us do. I know. We chose this place because it did not ask for anything first." Calder looked down. "I lost a wife and a daughter. Took me years to say that out loud." Selah placed her hand on the rail. That was all. The next day, Tula showed him a map, drawn in charcoal, hand-sketched lines, watch points, ridge trails, movement. She had been tracking. He nodded. "You were military," he said. "Scout, for a preacher's convoy. Left before I turned 15. Why?" She rolled her sleeve. A thin scar ran down her arm. "Because pain does not need to be holy." She turned and walked away. That night, Calder took the journal from the shelf. He opened it. The pages were yellowed, empty. He wrote 1 line. They stayed. Then he closed it again. Outside, the wind had stopped. The silence that followed was not heavy. It was strong. It had chosen to stay too. The sun dropped low. The wind came from the south that evening, warm and dry. It carried the smell of dust and something else. Leather, sweat, gun oil. Calder Ray stood near the barn. He was stacking kindling. His hands worked slow. but his eyes kept drifting to the ridge. Then he saw them. 3 riders. They came slow, not like travelers, not like men passing through. Their movements were too deliberate, too straight. They rode as if they were already expected. Calder set the wood down. He walked to the front gate, did not rush. He reached for the rifle only after he saw the glint of metal on their belts. They stopped 10 yards from the corral. The first man leaned forward in the saddle. Thick coat, long face, the kind of man who used silence like a hammer. "You have company out here," he said. Calder did not answer. "I heard it in town," the man added. "You keeping company with women who do not belong." Still no answer. One of the others laughed. Short, dry. "We are not here to start anything," the first man said. "Just figured you might want to start fresh, before things turn bad." At that moment, Scylla stepped forward. She moved without fear, stood just behind Calder, her arms folded. "We are not leaving," she said. The man's eyes narrowed. "I was not talking to you." Then another voice rose. Firm, sharp, tough. "We are still staying." It was Tula. She stepped out from the barn doorway, her hands at her sides, her eyes steady. Noe stood near the shed, Ronnie near the corral, Leah just beyond, by the tree line. Calder shifted his stance. He spoke then, his voice calm. "You came out here thinking I would fold, that you could scare people into moving." The man shrugged. "Not scare, just remind. This land's always been settled by the right kind." Calder took a step forward. "You mean white?" "I mean right." Calder raised the rifle, not to aim, just to make it clear. "Then you might want to ride back the way you came." The man looked past him, saw the fence rebuilt, the shed repaired, the smokehouse with herbs drying at the edge. "You built all this with them?" "No," Calder said. "They built it with me." A pause, long, stretched between saddle and soil. Then the led rider clicked his tongue, turned his horse. The others followed. They rode off without a word. Calder stood still. Only when the dust settled did he lower the rifle. That night, the fire burned low. The women sat close, not for fear, just for nearness. Calder ate beside them. For the first time, they passed bowls, broke bread, shared stew that tasted of meat and pepper and earth. He looked at each of them in turn. Then he spoke. "You have done more for this place in weeks than I have in years." No one said anything. "I did not ask for it," Calder said, "but I see it." He looked at Leah last. "If you choose to stay, you are not staying as guests. You are staying as owners, same as me." Sela nodded once. "We already stayed," she said. "We just waited to see if you would." No one smiled, but something lifted. Not celebration, just weight. The next morning, Calder found the hammer laid clean on the porch, not rusted, not forgotten, waiting just like him. The air felt different after they left, not safer, not quieter, just heavy, like the dust had not settled yet. Calder Ray stood at the edge of the porch. His fingers traced the worn handle of the shovel, the same one he had used for 30 years. Today, it would not dig fence posts. It would dig something else. A line, not on paper, on the land. That afternoon, he brought down the branding iron from the rafters, the same iron his brother had used before the war, before the fire, before the silence. It had been cold for years. The metal rusted, tucked behind old tools. He cleaned it, scrubbed until the shape showed clear again. A simple shape, a circle around a cross, a mark that once stood for cattle. Now it would stand for something else. He lit a fire behind the barn. Let the iron heat. He did not do it alone. Sela stood beside him, her eyes steady, her hands calm. "We need to leave a mark," he said. "We already have," she replied. "Then let others see it." That night, they gathered, all 5 women, Calder, the fire behind them, the fence in front. Each brought something to leave behind. Tula stitched a small cloth and hung it from the highest beam of the shed, a symbol embroidered in red, not just decoration, a memory, a shield. Noe crushed herbs into a thick paste. With charcoal and oil, she painted along the smokehouse door, not letters, shapes, symbols of growth, recovery. Ronnie took 3 stones and placed them in a triangle at the base of the garden bed. She pressed her palm to the soil, whispered something no one asked her to explain. Leah walked to the main post near the corral. She untied the braid from her hair, wove it into the wood, tight, permanent. Sela brought nothing in her hands, but she stepped forward last. She pressed her palm into the dirt, then stood beside Calder. "It is time," she said. Calder pulled the iron from the coals. The metal glowed red. He pressed it to the outer gate. The wood hissed. Smoke curled up. The mark stayed. A circle. A cross. But now it meant more than livestock. It meant presence. It meant we were here. We chose to stay. The next morning. Calder walked the fence line. Nothing was broken. Nothing was taken. The sun rose slow. Sela sat near the porch, her knife at her belt, still but not idle. Tula watched from the ridge, her gaze sharp, her stance relaxed. Ronnie watered the herbs. Leah fed the chickens. No stacked dry wood in rows so straight they looked like a carpenter's work. Nothing needed saying. Later that day, Calder found Leah near the swing. She had hung it between 2 ash trees with rope she had braided herself. It swayed slow in the breeze. "Did you make that for yourself?" he asked. "No, for the ones who will come later." He nodded. No questions followed. That evening, they ate together again. No ceremony, no prayer, just hands passing food, shoulders brushing in the small space. The iron still sat near the fire pit, cold now. But it had done its work. They had drawn a line, and now, whatever came, they would face it together, not hiding, not fleeing, but standing. The wind returned the next morning. It came fast. It carried heat with it, the kind that dried lips and turned dust into needles. Calder Ray stood at the edge of the porch. The land looked the same, but something in the air had changed. Then he saw the dust cloud, low, steady, 6 riders. They moved like a unit, not fast, not slow, just certain. Calder stepped down from the porch. He did not rush. He picked up the rifle, not to aim, just to carry. The women joined him. Sela stood to his left, knife at her belt, eyes steady. Tula moved to the right, her hands loose, her feet firm. Rainey walked from the barn, quiet but present. Noe came from behind the smokehouse, hands clean but ready. Leah stepped forward, last. She said nothing, but she was not in shadow. The riders came to a stop near the gate. One of them, older, broad in the chest, leaned on his saddle horn. "You are not from here," he said. Calder did not answer. The rider nodded toward the gate. "I see your mark." "You were meant to," Calder said. Another rider spoke up. "You know what this looks like. A man dying for something that is not his." Calder looked at him. "This is not about me." The rider pointed. "Those women, they are not your blood. They are not your kind." Leah stepped forward. Her voice was low, steady. We belong nowhere long enough. That ends here, Tula added. You want us gone? Then come take us. But you will not leave proud. The men shifted in their saddles. Their hands moved near the guns. But no one drew. Selah spoke. You think silence means weakness? She stepped forward. It does not. A pause followed. Long, dry. Calder watched their eyes. He saw what he needed to see. Doubt, not fear, but hesitation. The lead rider spat into the dirt. He turned his horse. The others followed. They did not look back. The dust followed them, but the weight stayed behind. Calder lowered the rifle. He did not say anything. Neither did the women. They stood there until the dust was gone. Then they turned. Walked back. That night, they did not talk about it. They cooked. They ate. Winona passed the stew. Tula washed the bowls. Ronnie stayed by the door, eyes on the dark. Leah sat close to the fire, arms wrapped around her knees. Calder sat beside them. He looked at their faces. He saw more than strength. He saw decision. Later, Selah joined him on the porch. You afraid they will come back? He asked. She looked at the land. Maybe, but we are not moving. He nodded. That night, he did not sleep early. He sat near the fire until it burned low. He did not think about the men. He thought about what it meant to stay, not as owner, not as protector, as part of something quiet, something chosen. The wind had changed again, but this time it brought no dust. It brought something softer. The days that followed were quiet, not because nothing happened, but because everything happened slowly. The earth began to breathe. Grass returned along the fence line, thin, but green. The chickens laid eggs again. The creek ran clear, even after a week of dry heat. The barn no longer smelled of damp wood. It smelled of hay, of work, of care. Calder Ray rose before sunrise. He did not move fast, but he moved with purpose. He was not the only one. Selah had taken over the smokehouse. She built new racks, stripped the old walls clean, hung venison to dry. She wasted nothing. Tula fixed the saddle straps, then the hinges on the loft ladder, then the broken latch on the front gate. Always something to mend. Always done before she was asked. No's garden had taken root. Small rows of sage, mint, wild onion. Her hands stayed stained with dirt, her focus steady. Ronnie no longer stood near the door each night. She began sleeping in the loft above the barn. Her steps still quiet, her gaze still distant, but she no longer kept her back to the wall. Leah stayed near the swing. She had tied it tighter between the two ash trees. She sat in it each evening. Back and forth, not for play. For thought. One morning, Calder joined her. He brought coffee. She brought silence. They watched the ridge. Feels different, he said. She nodded. I never thought I would stay anywhere, she said. You are not the only one, he replied. Later that day, Calder fixed the beam above the cabin door. The one that had been cracked for years. He had passed it 100 times, but now it felt like something worth fixing. By dusk, the air shifted again. The storm rolled in fast. The wind howled. The sky turned gray. Rain fell hard and cold. They moved without panic. Tarps came down, shutters closed, feed covered, lanterns lit. Inside the cabin, Calder watched the swing twist in the wind. Then he saw Leah. She was out there, rope in hand, fighting the pull of the gust. He opened the door. You will get soaked. She looked back. I want to keep it from snapping. He stepped out into the storm. Together. They tied it tight. Double knots. Afterward, they stood under the porch. Rain ran from their coats. Their breath rose in clouds. "Why did you build it?" he asked. For after the storms, the wind eased, the rain slowed. Inside, the fire crackled. The stew smelled of herbs and meat and warmth. That night, they all ate together. No one rushed. No one left early. After the meal, Calder took out his journal. He had written one line weeks before. Now, he wrote another. The land answered back. He closed the book. Outside, the swing moved again, but not from wind, from memory, and maybe from hope. 3 days passed. No riders, no smoke on the ridge. But Calder Ray did not relax. He rose earlier, slept lighter. He checked the fence twice a day. The same north post, the same cracked gate. Then, on the 4th morning, he saw it, a print, not from a mule, not from their boots, heavy, deep, facing inward, right at the fence line. Someone had come again. He said nothing. At breakfast, the women moved as usual, quiet, focused, but they saw it in his face. Tula asked first, "Was it fresh?" Yes, alone. No, that evening, they made no plans to run. Instead, they prepared. Rainey packed jars into baskets, covered them with cloth, buried one near the shed. No moved the herbs from the open shelf to a hidden box behind the stove. Tula cleaned her blade, hung it near the door. Sela did not speak. She sharpened her knife, then walked the perimeter in silence. Leah stood by the swing. She did not move. She just watched the horizon. Calder watched her. He remembered what she had said. For after the storms, by nightfall, the sky stayed clear. The fire burned low. Calder stood at the table. The pendant Leah had given him hung from a nail near the window. He looked at them all. Then he said it. They might come again, with more than words. No one replied. He looked at each face, one by one. "I will not run." Still silence. Then Selah stepped forward. We knew that. She placed her knife on the table, not as threat, as commitment. Tula placed her cloth beside it. Ronnie laid a stone from the garden. No, a dried bundle of sage. Leah stepped last. She placed a feather, black, clean. Then she looked at Calder. "This is ours." He nodded. The next morning, the dust rose again. 5 riders. They came fast. No talking, no waiting. Calder stepped outside, rifle in hand. He did not raise it. The women stepped beside him, together. The riders stopped short of the gate. One of them, younger than the others, pointed at the swing. "That yours, Leah," stepped forward. "Yes." The man stared at it, then at her. "You gonna give this up?" "No." He leaned in his saddle. "You ready to bleed for it?" Leah did not answer. Calder did. "She will not have to." The men shifted, tense. A long pause. Then Selah spoke. "You came here thinking we would break. We do not." The man spat. "You ain't law." "No," Calder said. "We are land." That stopped him. He looked again. The garden, the smokehouse, the mended fence, the fire still burning. He turned, left without another word. No guns drawn, no blood spilled, but the line was drawn. And this time, it held. That night, the wind returned, but softer. The fire burned, late. They ate slow. Calder opened the journal. He wrote one final line. We stayed, and they knew it. Then he closed the book, and for the first time since the war, he looked across the table and felt no weight, just belonging. Sometimes. The most important choices are made in silence. Calder Ray did not plan to rebuild a life. He only meant to help a man who was dying, but in choosing kindness, even when no one was watching. He opened a door he had long shut. This story reminds us that healing does not come with noise. It comes with presence, with small acts, with hands that work, and eyes that stay. The women who arrived did not ask to be saved. They carried wounds of their own, but by staying, by working, by respecting the land and each other, they built something greater than safety. They built trust. They built home. And maybe that is the lesson. You do not have to say much to matter. You do not have to lead to make a difference. You only have to choose, not fear. Not pride, but connection. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Thank you for spending time with this story. If it moved something in you, even just a little, we invite you to like the video. Share it with someone who needs to feel less alone. And if you want more stories like this, stories that carry silence, strength, and heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep the echoes alive. We are grateful you are here.